Hello, today we are going to tackle real obligation and the kinds of real obligation. Okay, what is this definition of real obligation? First of all, real obligation is a kind of obligation that is for a person that has obligation or to give or to deliver something. So, what do we mean by this is to deliver or give physically to the person that we are obliged. Okay, we have two kinds of real obligation, that is to deliver a specific thing and to deliver a generic thing. So magkaiba itong dalawa, magkaiba ang meaning ng specific at generic na words. So first, to deliver a specific thing pertaining to just one and specific thing. From the word specific, meron siyang label, meron siyang description, meron siyang palatandaan sa bagay na ito. So, this thing that you are obliged to give has descriptions that marks na may label ito sa pagbibigyan natin. Example, magbibigay ako ng baboy na may something sugat sa bintig, that makes it a narrower description. May description siya because of its label na may sugat sa paa pertaining to one pig. So yun, may palatandaan siya, leads to a specific kind of pig. So number 2, to deliver a generic thing, you are referring to a group of things that has similar characteristics. Isang bagay na you are obliged to give ay may kaparehas na, kunwari, I will give you my pig. Anong klaseng pig? Saan nanggaling na pig? Anong klaseng pig? Ganon. Which one? So we have also obligations to deliver a specific thing. This itong first na kind of real obligation. We have obligations to deliver a specific thing. So we have delivering the thing to a person that we are obliged to do, taking care of it before delivery, to deliver the fruits of the thing, to deliver accessions and accessories, and to pay damages if non-fulfillment or breach of the obligation. So you are referring to a group that is delivering the thing to the person we are obliged to. Of course, yun yung pinaka obligation natin. O number 2, taking care of it before delivery. So it means you're taking care of it because para hindi siya mawala, also preserving it until the time of delivery and taking care of it as a diligence of a good father. Sabi niya dito, of a good father, it means diligence of a good father in a good family. So a good father is caring, ganon. Also, we have to deliver the fruits of the thing. We have 3 kinds of fruits. We have natural, industrial, and civil. When we say natural fruits, ito yung nanggaling sa nature ng thing na yun. Also, we have industrial. Ito yung may human intervention. For example, yung pagtatanim ng palay na nagawa, naging bigas, yun ay tinatawag na industrial fruits. Meron siyang human intervention or labor. Also, we have civil fruits derived by the nature of a juridical relation. So paano natin ito pag-iiba-ibahin? Paano kasana tayo manasin dito When we say industrial fruits, meron siyang human intervention, human interaction or labor. If natural, it is derived by nature. Yeah. So also we have to deliver sessions and accessories, and also to pay damages if non-fulfillment or breach of obligation. Of course, you are going to pay the damages if guilty of fraud, if hindi mo nagawa yung obligation mo, hindi mo nagawa yung mga terms na obligation mo doon sa you are obliged to do. That is all. Thank you.
In addition, real obligation is something that a person needs to correspond with the fact to return from real right. For an example is a hotel employee's harassment one of their guests. The guest called attention one of the staff on hotel to bring an extra towel and a piece of blanket. Suddenly, the guest opened the door wearing an sleeveless. So the staff itself didn't aware of what he's been doing. So he suddenly touched the shoulder of the guest with an eyes of parang nanghahamon. So the guest yelled and the guard goes there. So yung company ay walang obligato sa problemang hinudlot ng kanilang staff na panghaharas sa kanilang guest.
Rights, duties, and obligation to give a generic thing. An obligation is the juridical necessity to give, to do, or not to do. Obligation to give may be over a specific thing or generic thing. Provisions cited below are taken from the New Civil Code of the Philippines.
Hello everyone, I am here to discuss about personal obligation. If real obligation is, it's an obligation to give. Personal obligation is an obligation to do or not to do, by which a person is bound or obliged to do certain things, and which arises out of sense of duty or result from customs and law. Personal obligation also is, the subject matter is an act to be done or not to be done. It's up to you if you were going to do it or not. Personal obligation also is to fulfill one's obligation, to bind promises, contracts, sense of duty, and etc. One of the example of this obligation is the a promise under contract of employment to work for B as a driver. There are two kinds of personal obligation, which are the positive personal obligations and the negative personal obligation.
Good morning. Today in this topic, we will be talking about the positive and negative obligation under the personal obligations. But first, may we define what is obligation. Obligation is a duty to do or not to do something. In its legal sense, obligation is a civil law concept. Next is what is personal obligation. Personal obligation means any liability or other obligation accrued, incurred, or payable by the company, or any obligation that is under this list, the breach of which would constitute a personal default. What is positive obligations? Positive obligations are, broadly speaking, obligations to do something to ensure respect and protection of human rights. One example of positive obligation would be measures taken in places of detention. Etiquette tapno mapreventaran da DJ smuggled migrants from committing suicide or harming themselves kun DJ dadungapay nga tattao. Because of its definition nga, it is to ensure respect and protection of human rights. Next, cut negative obligation. What is negative obligation? Negative obligations refers to a duty not to act, that is, to refrain from action that would hinder human rights. For instance, not returning smuggled migrants to countries where they face risk of persecution, the state will be abiding by the corresponding negative obligation. Etiquette, they are making money by which i-assist the digitao nga sumrek kung nag-stay in a country without legal permission. Ket deti migrant smuggling, ket it is a criminal act under the domestic law of many states. That is why negative obligation is una. Because ijay definition na nga kanana ket it is a duty not to act, that is, to refrain from action that would hinder human rights. Iso nga, negative obligation iso na. In summary of the positive and negative obligation, under the personal obligations are broadly speaking, obligations to do something to ensure respect and protection of human rights, while negative obligation refers to a duty not to act, that is, to refrain from action that would hinder human rights.
An obligation is juridical necessity to do or not to do. The requirement to do what is imposed by law, promise, or contract. Obligation is synonymous with duty. It's a tie which binds us to pay or to do something agreeably to the laws and customs of the country. Obligation is nothing more than the duty of a person to satisfy a specific and demandable claim of another person, which is breached is enforced in court. Prestation, particularly conduct of debtor. It may consist doing or not doing something. Obligation to do cover all kinds of works or services, whether physical or mental. Example, contract for professional services like painting, modeling, and singing. Obligation not to do consists in refraining from doing some acts like producing, aggravating noise, offensive odor, smoke, or heat.